Alrighty, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. It has finally happened. The NBA season is done. We have a champion. My name is Aaron, and per usual, though, I am joined by Mr. John Harris, who is already kind of alluding, in case you don't know and you're living under a rock, as to who won the finals. But first off, John, it's been 2 weeks. How you been? And yeah, how's it going?
It's going good. Obviously, I'm a little disappointed. I didn't really have a big, horse in this race because I'm not a fan of either team. I don't necessarily dislike either team, and those are the two things that tend to pick who I root for. Most years, there's a team I don't want to win.
Yeah.
This year, I was fine with both teams, but I part of me wanted the Suns to win because our good friend Kyle, he's a Suns fan. But also, I really wanted to see Chris Paul get a ring. I mean, out of everybody left, he was the one player who it really felt like this was probably his last chance. I mean, he can still play. They still have other opportunities, and we'll get into that later. But when you're that close at 36 years old, it just feels tough for him to lose. So it does suck that the Suns lost, but at the same time, it was really cool to see the Bucks win. So overall, I'm pretty good. I mean, I just got back from vacation at the beach.
Nice.
NBA Finals happened, so it's been a good week.
All right, so yeah, let's dive right into it. As you already kind of mentioned, the Milwaukee Bucks are the 2020-2021 NBA champions, 1-6. I mean, last time we were here, they're down 0-2. It felt like a much different series then, and then obviously they've won the last 4. So I guess in regards to the Bucks, I mean, it wasn't the craziest of adjustments, but they made a few, and we'll talk about the Suns in a bit. But I mean, really, I do want to start with Giannis, because obviously he was the MVP, and we all saw, especially the fact that he put his stamp on Game 6. 50 points. I don't know what more you could ask for anybody. I mean, that's incredible. And but I think also the fact that 2-3 weeks ago, I think we saw how his knee was twisted and almost bent, and the fact that he came back in this series, not only played well, but played, I would say, past what he elevated his game per se, or at least just. I would say elevated his game. I mean, we saw Game 6, 17 for 19 from the free throw line. That was, a concern for Bucks fans or for the Bucks in general, and the fact that he was able to hone in and just knock down his free throws, it put the Suns in a bind, because then the Suns couldn't just hack on us. So, and then that's what we're talking about with Ben Simmons. I mean, just to kind of go a little off topic, if you have helping a solid free throw would help, because then they can't just hack it, because it's just too easy points. They lose kind of a rhythm, because then your defense can set up off the made free throw. So, but yeah, shout out to the Bucks organization. I mean, a lot of development, because I want to add with Giannis, he's like the perfect raw prospect. Like, this is what you want out of a raw prospect. I mean, everyone looks back that he was drafted 15th. He was a raw prospect. I mean, everyone saw the graphic last night. I forgot how many inches he grew after he came in the NBA, but obviously he put the weight on, which he desperately needed to do. And, now he's a force, but then also built some, obviously got better ball handling, things like that. So, and not only him too. I mean, they have guys like, Chris Middleton, who they traded Brandon Jennings for, who we talked about in that group chat, who's apparently a Bucks legend. I wouldn't say he's a Bucks legend, but I guess if you want to consider him a Bucks legend because he got you Chris Middleton, then okay, that makes sense. It was a worthy price. But Chris Middleton too. I remember when I playing fantasy basketball, like right around the time they got him, and John, I got John Henson. Me and my friend Zach were like, why aren't they playing Henson more? Who is this? We didn't even look at his first name. We just saw K Middleton playing at the 4. We're like, who is this K Middleton guy? He stinks. Put in John Henson and let him grow. And obviously, we were wrong, because we've seen what Chris Middleton has become now. Even if he's not a superstar, I mean, he has shown he's a very good 2. And then there's also Drew Holiday, And I want to say that too. That was a tough. I can imagine it was a tough thing to do to trade Eric Bledsoe, but they had to make a move, and the fact that they pushed all their chips in the table, a small market team, got Drew Holiday, and it worked out because although Drew had some up and down offensive games, unlike Eric Bledsoe, he was. I think all 6 games he was locked in defensively, and it even got to the point. I think the broadcasters are kind of mentioning, and people are mentioning too, that the Suns were avoiding whoever was guarding Drew Holiday was guarding. They did not want that person to be the main ball handler, and we also saw Game 6 too, crunch time. He was all over Devin Booker. So that and all the other moves they made. I mean, Pat Connaughton, he's been even though he's had 1 point in Game 6, solid role player. Just even the role players that they have, they all play within the role and do things well. So, I mean, in regards to the Bucks, it's a good confidence builder too going forward because now you have the monkey off your chest. You've got the championship, so now next year the pressure's off. And then also last shout out to Mike Budenholzer, former Pop disciple. I mean, a lot of criticism he got going into this series, and even especially after the first 2 games, lack of adjustments, things like that. And once again, not that he made a bunch, but he got them to play a little bit better, better on defense, and then made a few adjustments necessary on offense too, and made the moves, playing Bobby Portis more, things like that. So good for him. I'm happy for him as a Spurs fan. I'm gonna throw it over to you now. What are your thoughts on this? At least the Bucks' performance this series.
I was really impressed. I think the one theme that really stood out to me for the Bucks winning was overcoming just everything that was said about this team. I mean, the most obvious one is Giannis can't hit free throws. He hit 17 of 19 in the closeout game last night. I mean, he was shooting like 40-something% on the series from free throw range. And then he did that in the most important game of the series at home to close it out instead of, allowing a Game 7 to be forced. You have to go back to Phoenix, which, would have put the momentum right back in the Suns' hands. And at that point, I don't know, the Suns, I think, probably win a Game 7 at their home court. So Giannis overcame that. He hit his free throws. Does this mean he's an elite free throw shooter now? No, but he hit them when they mattered most, and he was able to do it, in a closeout game and win a title because of it. Chris Middleton, I think for the last, I don't even know how many years, maybe even we've said it at some point. I don't know if we have, but so many people have said that he's not good enough to be a number 2 option on a championship team. And look at him now. He's an NBA champion. He was the number 2 option. And although he did have inconsistencies, which I know I have criticized him for, and he still showed in this series, the one thing he was consistent at was at the end of the games in fourth quarters, he made shots, and that's what mattered. Sure, he missed, plenty of shots too in those moments, but when it was close and they needed a bucket and it had to be a jumper, Chris Middleton was the guy who hit him. Drew Holiday, I don't think a lot of people really ever doubted Drew Holiday, but there was talk that when they made this trade that it might not be enough. They put all their chips onto the table for Drew Holiday. They have no more assets. They've been picked clean, and doesn't make them better than the Nets, doesn't make them better than the Lakers, doesn't make them better than XYZ team. A lot of people said that it didn't, and Drew Holiday, I mean, he showed his worth on that defensive end like crazy. I mean, he was an absolute menace, and like you said, people were avoiding him throughout the series. He was just locked down. And then Mike Budenholzer, I mean,
saved
even
his
I
job.
criticized.
Also, I forgot to mention that. Probably saved his job.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah, he's secure now. You're an NBA champion
for a season at least, though. At least one more season. He got one.
They're going to give him more than that. Are you kidding me?
It depends on next year goes, but sorry, continue.
Anyway, I mean, even I criticized him for not being able to adjust. And although I didn't think they necessarily made any massive adjustments, I mean, you got to think Bobby Portis played a lot of really key minutes in these wins that they had. I don't really remember Bobby Portis playing a ton in their first 2 games. I know he saw the court, but I mean, they were starting to run lineups out there with Giannis, Brook Lopez, and Bobby Portis, and it worked. Like it worked, and Bobby Portis became a fan favorite in this series because of the energy, because of how hard he was at working, and just the hustle plays that he was making throughout the series. You know, he was one of those pieces that made a difference when he needed to. So I got to give credit to Budenholzer because, you know, I said that I don't think the Bucks win this series simply for the fact that I don't think he can adjust to stop the high pick and roll that the Suns are running. And I mean, you got to give credit to Drew Holiday and Giannis and all these guys that were on the court doing it, but the Bucks they came up with an answer, and it didn't just, you know, translate to the home court, but they took a game in Phoenix that, you know, a lot of people thought they shouldn't have won, but they went out there and they took it. And then they, you know, closed it out on home court. They won 4 in a row after losing 2 straight. They overcame 2 2-0 deficits in this postseason. So you got to give a lot of credit to this whole team. I think that, yeah, just once again, the theme was that they overcame all the criticisms that were thrown their way. Like you said, all the pressure's off now. Now it's and Giannis is only 26. Like, we just made our post about his journey to becoming a champion and his resume, and it is crazy now that you had a Finals MVP and an NBA title on top of all the other accolades he has at 26. So now at this point, if you're the Bucks, you're looking to run it back. You're looking to try and maintain your spot at the top of the East, overcome even more naysayers, because I already know that the current title favorites for next year are the Brooklyn Nets. The second title favorites for next year are the Los Angeles Lakers, and then the Bucks are third. So people still doubt them. So, I mean, they showed that they can play being the underdog. They can play from behind and be the team that, you know, people are doubting, and they're going to overcome it.
Yeah, and also just like shout out to the fact that, and this is, you know, a lot of other people say this, but I want to say it too. The fact that Giannis, because remember, I think it was last summer when he was like, is he going to sign Supermax?
Yep.
I mean, there's rumors he might go to Golden State. There was rumors he might go to Miami. But shout out to Giannis for believing in the Bucks organization, and then also not only that, the Bucks organization making the necessary changes, like we just mentioned, to do that. Because I don't imagine many other franchises too that are not many other franchises are willing to push all their chips in the table, and especially, you know, like you mentioned, I mean. Yeah, that their big three isn't as good as other big threes, you know, in the league. But I think too, and that's kind of I want to allude to too, that we've mentioned, you know, guys like Brook Lopez, even though he didn't have the greatest impact in this series, Brook Lopez, but that's just because stylistically, you know, they kind of had to go more small ball in crunch time. But still, like you mentioned before, Brook Lopez played, you know, his especially when he came here, he used to be before he went to Brooklyn, he was basically the main scorer for most of the teams, you know, the Nets, and he was on the Lakers that one year when they were bad too. So he also had to learn to transition to more of a, you know, a role player, and he's also transitioned, but also been excelled at his role. So credit to him, and really just, like I said, just their development, because, you know, guys like Chris Middleton, Pat Connaughton, I mean, I'm forgetting, blanking on names. You know,
and Connaughton too, he had to play extended minutes because of DiVincenzo being out.
Yeah, and DiVincenzo, he wasn't even, and that's another thing too, like DiVincenzo wasn't a part of this series, and he's a very solid player. And that's what I wanted to get to too. Also, I mean, talk about critical decisions, like I think, was it 2-3 years ago when they had to let Brogdon, I think it was 2 years ago when they let Brogdon go too. They had to decide between Brogdon or Middleton. Mm-hmm. And it looks like they chose right, because they decided to sign Middleton. They let Brogdon. I'm pretty sure they let him walk. Regardless, he ended up in Indiana. So, yeah, just it's crazy how those, like, you know, either or decisions. Because I mean, really, you know, it was a tough decision. You could have gone either way. Looks like it's proven right, because Middleton, you know, stepped up big, like you mentioned, and also too, yeah, I want to say what your point of Middleton, just to add on. I mean, they also managed to win without Giannis, because remember, he was out. Was it both 5? Was it both? The Hawks series went 7 games, right? I'm forgetting.
Yes,
I think he was out both 6 and 7. Giannis, I believe.
Yeah.
So the fact that
he missed the last 2,
the fact that they were able to still galvanize and win those 2 games without Giannis, and then, you know, once again, like I think I mentioned in that first video, I was surprised Giannis was. I remember seeing the alert before game 1, he's going to be warming up and see if he can go, and I was like, this is going to be Anthony Davis. You know, if he does force himself to play, he's going to be limited, and he's going to, you know, have to get off the court. But no, he was effective. and got better as the series went on. And so yeah, and then that's why I want to go to the Suns, at least performance wise this series. It was like so the Suns. It seems like just from me watching, I didn't watch game 4 that much, but 3, 5, and 6. It just seems like, especially 5 and 6, they started simplifying, getting simple on offense. I started to be in more, okay, Booker kind of ISO, maybe a pick, get a pick on a switch, but then, and then on the, either Booker doing that or CP3 doing that. They weren't running as many, I feel like, plays to get the role players involved, which I think is kind of why we saw, Bridges didn't have a great game 6, but he'd have the many shot attempts. We saw Jay Crowder, which I know some people might be scapegoating him, but the fact that he didn't take that many shots, and then, he's going to miss the ones he has, that's part of, playing as a team. So, and then obviously I know Ayton's being criticized right now. But once again, I mean, it's important to remember Ayton's only in his 3rd year. Wasn't really known for his defense, so the fact that he got assigned Giannis and hung around, I mean, it was only a matter of time, but Giannis seemed to wear him down as the series went on. So yeah, I just think the Suns they went the opposite direction. It's like they didn't make, I feel like, many, especially on defense, many adjustments. Maybe throw more bodies at Giannis, because he, like we mentioned, he scored 50 last night. At some point, get the ball out of his hands. I mean, Drew Holiday, I forgot the stat, but I know Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton didn't shoot well either, at least as far as the whole game. And like I mentioned, Pat Connaughton, you mentioned, played major minutes, had 1 point, and that was a free throw at the end. So, yeah, I put that a little bit on Monty Williams. I know he's a good coach, and I hope they learn from this. And we'll talk about the Suns in a minute, but I just want to mention that, yeah, I mean, for the Bucks, I expect him to be back in this conversation next year. As for the Suns, I'm not sure. We can talk about it in a second. But regardless, I mean, congrats to the Bucks, their front staff, the front office. I forget, Steven Chinzo, did he have an ACL? I forget.
I can't remember what the
I'll look
injury
it
was.
up. But yeah, if there's anything else you want to add before we switch to the Suns, I'll look that up.
The one final thing I'll talk about is that, man, that if anyone didn't get to watch that game 6, you should go back and watch, because that was one of the most dominating finals performances I've ever seen out of any player. Because when you look at the box score, the rest of the team, there was nobody else for the Bucks who really stood out.
Except for Bobby Portis. I think Bobby Portis had like a solid 14 points, but
right. Bobby Portis, I mean, he definitely exceeded expectations, and he had his moments, but Bobby, I mean, he also sort of kept chipping in throughout the game. So sometimes when you feel like a role player stands out, it's because they have 1 quarter where they just blow up for 10. Bobby, he just kind of progressively kept, helping the team when they needed it. But he did, have a great game. But I mean, Middleton, I think he shot 5 for 12 or something like that.
6 for 13.
6 for 13. Drew Holiday was pretty
It
terrible.
was 4 for 19. And I think I saw a stat where he was less than 50% on his layups, on his layup attempts.
Yeah. There was a point where he was 1 for 11. Yeah. He had a really bad game, although he did have 9 rebounds and 11 assists. Yeah. So, I mean, he played amazing defense. So, he contributed in other ways. But
PJ Tucker 0 for 1, by the way. That's the only 0 points.
So, I mean, there just really wasn't anybody offensively in that game who really stood out to you except for Giannis. I mean, Giannis had half of the team's points. He had 14 rebounds. Like we talked about, he hit every single free throw except for 2, and he took 19 of them. And I think the key difference there is that throughout Giannis's career, and you have to give him credit for this because it's the modern day NBA and people love to criticize you for not taking threes. Throughout Giannis's career, he's tried to become a shooter. But in this finals, he realized that's not the thing that he is best at. And the thing that he is best at is getting in the paint and being a problem and forcing players to get into foul trouble because of how dominant he is inside, and using his speed, his quickness, his athleticism, his strength, and just bullying people. And he did that throughout the entire finals. I have never seen Giannis be so dominant in any stretch of his career until this moment, to where and I never got to see prime Shaq because I was too young back then to watch 02, 03, all that, to really remember anything. But from the highlights and just the reruns and the stuff that I've got to see, like that performance of Giannis was the closest to a like dominating level I've ever seen, because Giannis, whatever he wanted to do inside, he got it. And I mean that. And like some other players have dominant, like Steph Curry, for example, he has dominating performances from like three and all these kind of things. But that's a little different because there's like screens, there's all these creative play calls. Steph can shoot from wherever he wants, so you have to guard him from like half court, which makes it so hard for the defender. Giannis is going to one spot, and that is the paint. That is as close to the bucket as he can possibly get. And everyone knows it. With Steph, you don't know where he's going to pull up from because he can do it from anywhere. Giannis, it's going to be one spot, and he still just destroyed the Suns in that game however he wanted to. He got DeAndre Ayton in foul trouble so early in that game where he had 3 early in the third. He then got his 4th in the third. He got his 5th early in the 4th. Like, Ayton was already having a hard time guarding him, and he couldn't stay on the court because of the foul trouble, and nobody else could really stop him. So that was one of the best finals performances, a single game finals performances I've ever seen. I don't know if it's the best. I'd have to remember, thinking back to some of, the LeBron times and the Steph times and Kawhi and, some of these, Tim Duncan and all these great players, Kobe. But it was definitely up there. And I have to say that although I was rooting for the Suns to win, I'm happy that Giannis and the Bucks and a small market team and a guy who stayed loyal, I'm happy that that's the guy who won. Obviously, the Suns weren't like the opposite. They weren't the super team or whatever. But it just always feels good to see teams like that, right? Where like the Spurs dynasty or the Mavericks championship or the Warriors first title, just stuff like that, to where the team built this roster and the guys grew within the system and they trusted the team and it all came together and it worked. Because in the modern day NBA, that's not really how, championships are won for the most part. And so I know that Adam Silver's got to be happy because he probably hates the narrative that super teams are the only way to win. But I think the fans too are happy to see Giannis, a guy who also is so incredibly likable, get his first ring.
Yeah, and so all great points there. I forgot what I was gonna look up.
DiVincenzo's injury.
Oh, so it's an ankle injury, so he should be. I think they said he already had surgery on it, so he probably will be back whenever he'll be back for time for the playoffs next year at least. It's not like he'll be out a year. That's what I was fearing. So that's the Bucks. So yeah, I mean, we kind of already talked to the Suns. We can talk, a little bit